So like I said, I'm on the phone call and all I could hear is gravel. So I turned and all I could do was let out a scream. Ernie was standing with his back. He pivoted and took an impact on the side. The next thing I know is I'm waking up in a hospital. And my mom was the one who gave me the news that my son did not make it. And that was hard because I couldn't move and I'm in a lot of pain, just trying to comprehend what happened and why am I here? If my body is feeling this bad, why am I still here?
This is the Lost Child Podcast, where we delve into the topic of losing a child. Before we get started, we've noticed that only 20% of you are subscribed. One small way that you can show your support is by hitting that subscribe button. Our goal is to get this metric to 50%. As we gain subscribers, we can attract some of the most influential thought leaders in this space, which will help us all. It doesn't cost anything, so just hit that subscribe button. Now, let's jump into the podcast. Thank you, Kristine, for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Just to get started, can you tell us about your child, who they are, what their name is, that ended up passing away?
Sure. My son is Quinton Stone Jackson. He was 9.5 years old and he transitioned June 10th of 2009. So we're going on 16 years this year.
And so he was 9?
He was 9.5. Yeah, he was 9.5 years. Those half years, they matter.
Oh, yeah.
They matter when you're that age,
yes,
you know?
For sure.
Yeah, so yeah, he was 9 years old. But his birthday is December 15th. So he was 9.5. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's just a special little boy that Ernie and I were fortunate enough to bring into this world and have 9.5 blessed years with him. Mm-hmm. And he transitioned. Freak accident.
Yeah. We can get into the accident in a little bit, but can you tell us maybe some of your favorite memories with Quinton?
Oh my goodness. There's so many.
There's always so many.
There's always so many, but I think some of the ones that really, he was such a compassionate child. He, like when we lived back in Colorado, I'd have some late nights, so I'd come home and he'd always be the first one to greet me at the top of the stairs. We had a raised ranch home. So I'd come in through the basement, park my car in the garage, and I'd come in through the basement. And he was always the first one to greet me at the top of the stairs with the biggest smile. How was your day, Mom? Mm-hmm. You know, just the biggest hug, because he knew my days are long, you know. Coming home, they probably have already eaten dinner that I prepped prior to leaving to work. And he was so grateful to Mom made it home and, you know, and let's talk and everything. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the ones that really stands out for me. But his birth, you know, just bringing him into this world again. My pregnancies were not very easy. And the whole fact, you know, that I was able to conceive and have him, carry him to term, that was all a blessing. But the easiest process, even though my births were not, you know, prior pregnancies and all that weren't easy. I go to my last OB doctor visit and they're like, oh, you're dilated. I was like, really? You can go to the hospital now. It's like everything was so smooth from there on. Yeah. And I should have known that's the way his life was going to be too. Mm-hmm. There was not every moment with him. I can't even remember the time when I had to raise my voice to him. He was just that kind of a child, you know, that he was always happy. My children, both of them, I'm so blessed. They slept through the night at 6 weeks.
Wow.
They were not criers.
Is blessed.
Yeah, right? How uncommon is that? You don't hear of that.
Ours wanted to party all the time.
No, they were so good. And I always said, you know, it was because of my pregnancies. I went through so much prior that it was a relief that once I had them, they were perfect. Yeah. They were perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And he was so perfect. But just his friends and everything, he was just a joyful child. You know, so many, we had a family that lived next door to us. They had 7 children.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we all had like acres and they were close, but not too close. So it's like he had a lot of friends, but he ultimately had 7 right next to us, you know, so they grew up together and he always wanted to have him over. Can we have Thomas, Sean, and Aiden were the three youngest one around his age, and he was always the one. Can we have him over? You know, can they stay for lunch? And can we all get snacks and everything? He always was inclusive.
Yeah,
that kind of a child, you know. But also another thing that stands out to me is my dad passed when Quinton was 2.
Okay.
6 years and 2 days apart. So my dad passed June 8th.
Oh, wow.
Of 2003.
Wow.
Quinton passed 2 days later. 6 years later.
Wow.
Very close. The two of them were very close. Even though there was only the 2 years that they got to share together, they were very, very close. So my mom was only 59 at the time. My dad was 59 when he passed. And my son and my mom began a very good, relationship because he was closer to my dad prior when my dad was here in the physical. He ultimately gave all his time to my dad. But then when he passed, he kind of became the nurturer to my mom, you know? So at a young age, who would ever think this? You know, he would always tell us, Mom, I'm going to take care of Gigi. I'm going to take care of her when I get older. She's going to live with me. And she's going to help me raise my family. And I want her to, you know, be a part of our lives forever.
Oh, so sweet.
Yeah. It's like, how does a youngster at that age know this? He was so wise beyond his years.
Yeah.
So wise. He would say things that we'd look at each other like, how is that coming from a young child, 2, 3, 4 years old? You know, but he was, you know, he was wise beyond his years. So that stuck out to me too. Is like, he's special. This child is special. Like, I'm not even trying to understand it anymore. He's really special. He is wise beyond his years. And I think he's been here before.
Yeah.
I think he's been here before, and he is going to help Mom. He's going to help her because she's only 59 years old and she's having to go through this. You know, my mom lived here in Arizona. We lived in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
We all flew in for that passing of my father. But like I said, this 2-year-old saying these things, it's like, wow. So that's another one that really stood out to me. And he did take care of her because when he did transition, settlements, you know, came and everything. And we didn't think twice when we got his settlement. He said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to buy a house back in Arizona. At some point, we'll come back and we'll live in it. But it's going to be ultimately Grandma's house.
Wow.
You know, and we moved my mom. She was living in a senior community by herself, paying rent. We moved her into that house and we took care of her from that day forward.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is she still alive now, or has she?
She actually transitioned on June 26th of 2023.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But she was just shy of her 80th birthday.
Okay.
And she was a cancer survivor. Yeah, she had breast cancer and ultimately liver cancer is what took her.
Oh, wow.
But they had a great relationship. And it gave me comfort knowing that, you know, when Quinton did transition, knowing that my dad was already over there. Yeah. I grew up with a spiritual background. I was brought up Catholic, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I practiced the Catholic religion. I'm more spiritual.
Okay.
And it gave me comfort knowing, you know, that my dad was over there already. My grandpa was over there already, who I was very close to.
Yeah.
So when my mom eventually transitioned, they're all together. You know, so before I used to see things in 1 or 2, now I see things in 3. And I know that's my dad, my mom, and my son.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And I recognize, you know, and we can be sad. I look at the joy in it, you know, because they're still trying to show me. They're right here.
Yeah.
They're right here. Yeah.
Here's also a reminder to subscribe and follow this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Now, back to the podcast. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how Quinton passed away?
And from your perspective.
Yeah, the best thing is from almost like a narrative that you just take us from where you're at and all the things that way.
So each year, since my dad's passing in 2003, we go and we celebrate as a family, memorialize him.
Oh, okay.
Usually the second week of June. In the past, our trips have been to Rocky Point, Mexico. That particular year, 2009, swine flu was going on. And there was a bunch of drug cartel that was going on down there, down south. So family was really asking us, to beware, be cautious. And it's like, okay, we weren't scared.
Mm-hmm.
We knew where we go. It's a resort. It's gated.
Yeah.
We don't usually leave the campus. We're not looking for trouble. If you were looking for trouble, you could find it.
Yeah.
We always stay as a family, the pools, the beaches, right there. We don't have to go anywhere. The restaurants everything's right there, know. So we weren't really too concerned about it, but we took the family's feelings into consideration and we adjusted our plans. And we sought out Lake Powell. We had never been. Okay, let's do something different. To rent a houseboat.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. It'll be something new. We've never done it. Go memorialize Grandpa out there. My mom comes into town. Bless you.
Thanks.
Normally, my nephews would go with us. But for some reason that year they didn't. So it was just my mom, us as a family, my daughter, my son, my husband, and my daughter's best friend, Layla.
Okay.
We set out to go to Lake Powell. I'm not sure what day it was, but it was the week of June, probably 5th or 6th. We spent a week out there. The best time. And leading up to it and looking back now, I believe my heart knew at some level something was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I prepared all Quinton's favorites, not knowing I was preparing his particular favorites as far as foods. I'm not one to let my children drink soda unless it's a special occasion. Or, of course, if they're out with a friend, and I'm not going to tell them, no, you can't, because I took a case of root beer on that trip with us, and that was his favorite soda to enjoy. So, he ultimately went out with a bang. He got all his favorite foods, his sodas and everything. We memorialized Grandpa and had a celebration because we always celebrate.
Yeah.
And he was different. He was very in his head. He was having a good time with him, doing his thing. We did hikes and everything, played in the water, and he was just different that trip. He was very much here and there, I feel. Here and there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we celebrated. We June 10th came and we were departing. We had taken 2 friends' jet skis with us, carrying them on their trailer that they had loaned us. We had issues with these jet skis from the very beginning. But ultimately we had fun on them. We enjoyed some good times, but they were waterlogged. I think, when we put them back on the trailer, we had never, dealt with anything like that before, but we got them back on the trailer and we set back to come back to Conifer, Colorado from Lake Powell. And we noticed, okay, something's not right with the trailer as we're traveling back. At that point, it must have been probably 4-ish, 5-ish, because I believe the accident happened in the 5:30-ish, 5:45-ish time, PM. We pulled over into a pull-out area where Ernie was going to check the trailer, see what's going on. We're not traveling while our Suburban is not. It's feeling a little unstable with this trailer. Let me just check it. He gets off the vehicle, comes and tells me, you know what? I think it's best we just unhinge this trailer. Let's call AAA. Yeah. And they'll get it back to home and we'll go from there. Yeah. So I did. I got out of the vehicle. I wanted to see it myself. So I got off the vehicle. The 3 of them stayed in the vehicle. Ernie was outside checking it out and everything. Let me get on the phone, call AAA, tell them what's going on. And here comes Quinton out on my side. Mom, do you guys need any help? And it's like, no, son, I'm going to call AAA. We're just going to Dad's going to take the trailer off of the Suburban.
Yeah.
And we're going to make our way back home. Go ahead and get back in the Suburban. So I'm standing on the passenger side of the vehicle, had closed the door. I'm on the phone with AAA. I'm under the impression that he went behind the vehicle to go get back into his seat, which was on the other side behind the driver's seat in the Suburban. Ernie's still over by the trailer. Thinking that he went to get back in. Like I said, I'm on the phone call and all I could hear is gravel. So I turned and all I could do was let out a scream. I couldn't say anything. I just let out a scream. So while Ernie was standing with his back towards the vehicle, oncoming towards him, he pivoted and took an impact on the side. I don't remember anything from there. That was it for me.
Yeah.
I could tell you what I know happened from what I'm told.
Ernie kind of gave us all of that. So let's just kind of go with, and so if anyone wants to know more about that, they can just watch Ernie's.
Yeah.
And we kind of get that the car hit. There was a car that came off of the road, hit your guys' Suburban.
Yeah, she fell asleep at the wheel. But that was it for me.
Yeah. So
you got hit and
I got hit,
out.
run over. I'm being drugged under a vehicle. The next thing I know is I'm waking up in a hospital.
Wow.
Okay.
So let's take us from there, from that point.
How I got there, I have no, I didn't know at that point in time. Okay.
Yeah.
What had happened, I didn't know. I'm waking up. What's going on?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you wake up quickly after you got to the hospital, or was it the same day that you woke up, or was it the next day? I think it was the
same day. I don't remember really any. All I remember is what I've been told.
Okay.
My mom was there, and my mom was the one who gave me the news that my son did not make it. And that was hard, because I couldn't move. I'm in ICU, and I'm kind of in shock. I'm in a lot of pain. I remember that I was in a lot of pain, and I think it was, mentally, physically, emotionally, and just trying to comprehend what happened, and why am I here?
Yeah.
If my body is feeling this bad, why am I still here? And she's just trying to reassure me, that it's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. Everybody's okay, but Quinton's not with us anymore. And reassuring me, he's with Dad now. He's with Dad. And from there on, it was just a matter of recovery for me. I was flight for life to Farmington, New Mexico from Cortez, Colorado, where the accident happened. And I spent 6 days there.
Wow.
6 days there. I had no major surgeries. I was beat to hell.
Did you have broken bones and stuff?
I had 5 broken ribs.
Okay.
I had a broken fibula, and I had extensive road rash on my back.
Because you were actually underneath the car.
I was underneath her. I think it was a Grand Am, Pontiac Grand Am. So they're lower to the ground.
Yeah.
So it was no wonder why my body was in complete discomfort.
Oh, yeah.
I was shredded.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how I survived.
Wow.
But I did, miraculously. 6 days later, I walked out of that hospital.
Really?
Because there was nothing else that they could ultimately do for me. I didn't need any surgeries. I needed rehab, and I needed PT.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I needed a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I could do that at home. We're living in a hospital for 6 days out of our suitcases that we traveled with the week prior.
Lake Powell.
It's like, no, let's go home. I could do all this at home. I could do the rehab at home. I need to be home. I need to be in our home. I don't need the medical attention, and that's what we did. We had friends that rallied together. They chartered us a private jet.
Wow.
Picked us up the nearest airport there and got us back to Centennial, Colorado. Got us back to Colorado, to Conifer, where our home was. And I started my rehab. Initially it was mental and emotional rehab. Mm-hmm. When I was ready for it, I started the physical because first I had to get myself able to process first what's gone on.
Of course.
What has gone on, because I'm still trying to comprehend all this. And I could barely walk. I didn't want anybody to touch me because I was in that much pain and I had open wounds. So it was a journey. It was a journey,
How long do you feel like it took you to go from a place where you could start that physical rehab?
I think it must have been around maybe 3-4 weeks before I started PT.
Okay.
Yeah. Where I was even comfortable getting in a car. I didn't even want to get in a car, I
just hung out at home.
I just wanted to be at home. Mm-hmm. My mom was there with us. She stayed for a short period of time after we got back after the accident. My mother-in-law came into town. We had a lot of friends and family that were constantly in and out of our house. People, we had so much food and everything that was being brought to us, so much that Ernie's company brought us an upright freezer to put in our basement that it just filled it. It filled it, so the community came in abundance.
They just come rescue. Clean your house too?
Everything. Mm-hmm. They came to clean my house. Everything and anything you could possibly think of, they were there. Ernie didn't want to be left alone.
Yeah.
He needed that. All I wanted was to be left alone.
Would you tell Ernie, tell people to go away?
No. We were the kind of people that we had an open door. We lived where we lived. We didn't even lock our doors. Our house was always a safe haven. People knew that they can come anytime. So no, everybody was always welcome, but I removed myself.
Okay.
I go to my room, like I said, I was still trying to process. I'm still trying to process everything that just went on, and just the pain. I was checked out as well. With that kind of pain, they had me on drugs.
Yeah.
And so while I was here, in some levels I wasn't here,
couldn't really process very well because your brain's not working right.
Yeah. So for me, it was just better to be in my bed, or I could sleep. And I was on no tryptylene, so it would make me tired. Mm-hmm. So I was sleeping a lot. But that's what I needed to do for me, and then when it came time, I was feeling a little bit better and I was able to be a little bit more mobile. Okay, I would come out. It was the summertime, so my daughter was there. She would help occasionally. My mom would help. But it was, a journey of healing slowly for me, very slowly, because like I said, I had to get my heart and wrap my mind around what just happened.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This new normal, going into my son's room, everything, just being in that space. It was a lot. It was different. It's different now. But I did what I had to do for me. We were all trying to do what was best for us.
Yeah, of course.
Because we didn't know what we didn't know.
Yeah.
Ernie was doing what was best for him. If anybody, my daughter, we didn't know what to do. My daughter was about to be 16, or she had just turned 16 at that time. So the teen, the 16 years, so she's trying to process it all, and she went down a rebellious stage. But her and my mom were very close. I was grateful for them to have that time together, because while I couldn't be there for her, my mom took that role.
Okay.
And kind of stepped in for her. Yeah.
That's nice.
So yeah, like I said, I started my rehab and physical therapy, and got back to, feeling somewhat comfortable. I had a boot that I had to wear for a little while. My ribs eventually healed. I had a blow to my head here that I have a scar from, but like I said, no major surgeries or anything. I had a traumatic brain injury. They did declare me to have some level of brain damage. So I had to go through all of that as well for them, for the settlements, for them to determine the extensiveness of to my injuries.
Yeah.
For settlement wise, she didn't have anything. So it was like, we couldn't really get all that much, but insurance paid what they could pay.
Yeah.
But I had to go through all the treatments and so that they could process their claims.
Yeah, of course.
To see where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I did all that. I did pain management therapies as well, and so it was a lot. Do
you feel, how were you mentally during all of that? Like how long was the recovery process anyway for physically?
Well, I went back to work. I had worked, and I went back to work. I attempted to go back to work September.
So a couple months after
of that year. Yeah. Thinking, okay, physically I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
I was an office manager for a chiropractor.
Okay.
Physically I could do it. Months later, I realized mentally I can't.
Yeah.
It's a family chiropractic office.
Okay.
And while I can put on a brave face and engage with everyone, because that's who I was, we were family oriented, my heart was still bleeding.
Yeah.
And it was hard. So I had come the beginning of the year, 2010, I had come to the conclusion that, I'm going to probably put in 6 more months. Because not only was she my boss, she was a neighbor and we were good friends. Yeah. And she understood, you got to do what's best for you. So I think I'm going to have to take a step back come May. This will probably be my final year with you. And she totally understood. So meanwhile, I was still doing my rehab, working. I have a 16-year-old daughter, trying to, do what's best for my marriage, because while we're grieving different, we're in 2 different worlds.
Oh yeah.
So
one question I would have is, because of you waking up in the hospital and kind of the drugs and stuff that you were on to control your pain and everything, was there a point where it really hit you that Quinton was no longer here?
Well, like I said, when my mom came and told me it was a shock. Yes, that, he wasn't here. It was a shock that I was still here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was questioning why I was still here. For a long time, I questioned, why am I still here? They're telling me what happened to me. I was like, how can I still be here? You're telling me I was run over by a vehicle. My body was mangled. You're telling me Flight for Life didn't want to take me because they didn't think I'd survive the transport. Why am I here? Yeah. I'm thinking, am I really here? Mm-hmm. Am I really here?
Yeah.
And because of my pain level, I could tell I'm really here.
Yeah.
So it was a shock. But ultimately, like I said, once I realized when she told me, and then told me, he's with Dad. It brought some level of comfort to my heart, knowing that, okay, he's not here. Everything's going to be okay. Everyone else is okay. And he's with my dad. And my dad was my hero, so therefore he's safe.
Yeah.
He's in the best place he could possibly be because he's with Dad.
Yeah.
So I didn't really question it.
Okay.
After that.
So take us from there. You said that you had gone to your chiropractor friend, the office manager.
She's
you were
the doctor.
there.
Yeah, she's the doctor. And you
said, I need to be done. Take us from there then. What happened from there?
She was, and that was 2010, May of 2010. I continued. I was on physical therapy for a while, doing treatments and what have you. But I had also gotten heavily reliant on my meds to function.
Yeah.
And I was still very angry, trying to process, everything.
What kind of things did you do to help cope with things?
A lot of prayer. That's probably the one thing that got me through is my faith.
Yeah.
My faith, knowing that he doesn't give anything that he knows that we can't bear. I never, people ask me, well, were you ever angry at God? It's like, no, this happens all the time. And they would ask me, well, why you guys? And why not us? We're just average people, we see this happening all over. So no, I'm not angry at God, and we're not anybody special. We're just trying to get by like everyone else. There's something for us to learn from this. This is going to take us down a road. But I think there's definitely ultimately something to learn.
Yeah.
So I did. I wrapped it up with my job May of that year, continued on my rehab. But again, like I said, I was on meds, and that's kind of what allowed me to somewhat cope, but I'm still trying to process my anger.
Yeah.
Because I believe with grief, you have to go through all the emotions.
And what were you angry at then?
Yeah,
I was angry at the fact that what happened, the accident itself.
You just were mad that he was there.
I'm mad. We're in trial. It's taking over. It took ultimately 2 years.
Wow.
For this to come to conclusion, and I'm angry, and I'm out for blood, and that was not me. That was not me. I'm a very forgiving person. My husband is not a forgiving person. I'm sure he told you he forgave at the accident site, and I was in disbelief. How could that be? I'm still have this weight on my heart, and I want to forgive so desperately. I was somewhat angry at myself that I couldn't forgive. Allow me to process this so that I can relieve the pressure on my heart, because I don't want to be this person.
Yeah.
That was hard for me. Like I said, coming from my upbringing, love, nurturing. I came from a great background, wonderful household, loving, nurturing parents, and very forgiving hearts, and I couldn't forgive. And that was very hard for me. But
how do you feel like you ultimately were able to forgive?
I think a part of it had to do, with Ernie talking and sharing the messages, because there was a point when early on in our journey, that I was angry at him.
Yeah.
Because he was talking so much about it, and I'm trying to process why you're just talking about it, but are you feeling it? In some ways I wanted to judge him. And then I'm realizing, who am I to judge? I'm not going to judge him. No, I can't judge him. And then I came to realize that, what? He's sharing a message.
Yeah.
He's sharing a message, so while he's doing these engagements and sharing his story and in the process of writing his book, he's doing God's work. He's doing God's work, and he's able to share how he was able to forgive and how he was able to process. And I know I'll get there. I know I'll get there eventually. At that point, I wasn't getting visits from Quinton. Ernie had. So it was a little bit easier for him because he's had that connection already.
Yeah.
I was hearing Quinton in my ear. I could hear him. I could hear his voice, and I could hear him talking to me, but I had yet to see him, feel him, get those visual signs. I didn't see him visually, his face or anything, but the hummingbirds and all that stuff, that we recognize now. I wasn't getting that initially. And part of it was because I was so heavily checked out on meds.
Yeah.
So once I started to go down the road of trying to accept, to forgive, get myself better, wean myself off of meds, then more of the signs came. I could feel him, and I'm seeing more, and I'm healing my heart, and I'm releasing some of that anger and heaviness on myself because I was doing it all to myself. Nobody was doing it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had all the support in the world. So I knew ultimately it was going to take me to heal me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just patient with myself. You know, I allowed myself grace and knew in time, Quinton was always there with me. Always. You know, so in time, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ultimately be okay. You know, so it's just a slow process. It's just a slow process. You know, it took, like I said, it took the 2 years to complete the trial. I think up until that week prior, Ernie didn't want me to go because we had to come back to Durango, Colorado for the hearing because that was the closest courthouse to where they lived.
Okay.
She was Navajo and they lived in Anath, Utah.
Wow.
So the accident happened Four Corners area.
Mm-hmm.
So Durango was the closest courthouse. And like I said, prior, he was like, I don't really know if you or Cheyenne should come. I'm going to go handle it. I'll come back and we'll go on to do our regular annual trip. Because it just happened to be that this was going to happen around the time we go and memorialize my dad.
Yeah.
And now we would be memorializing my dad and my son together. I was like, no, I think I can handle it. I think I'm okay. You know, he was still thinking I'm out for vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and not knowing what I would do, basically. Like, no, we all went to the trial, heard the judge's rulings. And I think from that day forward, it was like a changed event because we engaged with her. We asked to engage with her. So it was another step forward in my healing process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We saw her remorse, you know, and that was big, I think, for me.
Yeah.
She happened to have a child, a 6-month-old child at that point in time.
Wow.
That her mom was basically raising. She was at a crossroads in her life when this happened. So there was definitely something for her to learn as well,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that was a big part in the healing, you know, and I was able to release that heaviness and that anger and forgive myself, you know, for allowing myself to go there. But it was part of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're all imperfect beings, something to learn. And I learned and I was able to move forward. So now, you know, we're friends on Facebook. I see her children. She's got 4 of them now.
Wow.
You know, wish them happy birthday. And I'm friends with her mother as well. They opened their home to us after the events. They had us partake in a healing powwow kind of
cool.
after the event. Yeah. Which was, I mean, it's unheard of, you know, really unheard of. But we did. We went to her home, spent time with her. I've met her husband. And they're beautiful people. They're beautiful people that just happen, our paths just happen to cross, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So did that forgiveness end up just taking all that time you put in, or was it kind of snapped and you were able to forgive her at the verdict? Is that kind of what happened?
It was kind of summing it up right there is, you know, I was able to move forward.
Yeah.
At that point in time, you know, I had given myself enough time. I had allowed myself to wean off of meds. I was feeling good physically. Emotionally, I was getting stronger, and mentally. So that was the big turnaround for me, was that hearing, because now we could breathe and just let it all go.
Yeah.
You know, that's behind us. We could all move on with our lives as a family. So yeah, at the 2 year, pretty much at the 2 year point, was where it kind of took a turn for me. So that was 2012. No, 11. Because the accident happened in 9. So yeah, I think it was summer of 11. I would come back and spend time with my mom because now we had the home here that we bought for her.
Okay.
And that was good for me because I didn't have to work anymore. So try to be with her as much as I could. She was also a big part of my healing. She was actually probably the reason why I'm here as well, is because the last thing I remember from that accident is telling her to get off of my chest, that I couldn't breathe. My lungs were collapsing.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember her in my ear, Chris, I'm not on your chest. You can't leave me. Don't leave me. Stay with us. Stay with us. And I could hear her in my ear, the high tone voice, stay with us. Stay with, I don't know if she's trying to give me, resuscitate me or what have you. But I think that's one of the things that brought me back as well, is her in my ear. And then ultimately I just realized, Quinton left, but I believe his spirit came to me and helped me pull through that accident, because there's no way that I should be here, much less be able to walk.
Yeah.
So I'm still shocked. I'm still shocked. I look at myself in the mirror and I see my scarred body, the wounds that I carry. The grace of God. The grace of God is what got me through and continues to get me through. Is knowing miraculous things happen all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of them, surviving that accident.
So I don't want to sound insensitive in this, but if I put myself in your shoes, right? This seems like the perfect time to tell you about one of our video sponsors, BetterHelp. I was actually turned on to BetterHelp by one of you, our listeners. He and I were talking and texting about some of the normal things that all of us experience, like anxiety. He described how he needed to seek out a therapist, but he didn't know where to begin. So he used BetterHelp. Using their system, he was matched with a therapist. I believe many of us think about getting help or seeking a therapist, but don't know where to begin. BetterHelp fixes that. BetterHelp is a service that matches your needs with a therapist that has been vetted by the company. If you use our link, you'll get 10% off your first month, and they'll know the podcast sent you. It's a win-win-win. So if you're interested in finding a therapist but don't know where to begin, visit the link in the video description or go to betterhelp.com/LCP. That's betterhelp.com/LCP. LCP stands for Lost Child Podcast. Now let's get back to the rest of the podcast. But if I put myself in your shoes, right? And some of the things that I've been through, the same thing. So the question I would have in my mind that maybe you've had, and maybe you can have an answer to it, is why that miracle that you survived and not the miracle that Quinton survived? It seems such like opposing views that like, oh my gosh, it's this amazing miracle that you survived and Quinton didn't.
Yeah.
Have you had to grapple with that?
I did. And the only conclusion I could come up with is that, like I said, in the 9.5 years that he was here on this earth, he was an old soul. And I don't really think that he was here to learn very much. He came into this world to teach us. From the time we conceived him, from the time I found out I was pregnant with him, I didn't think I was going to have any more children.
Yeah.
So he was a blessing from then. And he came in here in this world to teach his dad, who was, he was everything about his job. He lived for his career, climbing that ladder.
And his status.
Yeah. And his status because of his upbringing, So Quinton came in this world to show his dad, you're loved. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. He came in this world to show me, Mom, you're worthy. You have so much to offer, to love his sister, even though they had a combative relationship. They're 6.5 years apart.
Yeah.
There was so much that child taught. And I believe in the 9.5 years that he was here was a lifetime for him.
Yeah.
So I didn't, I did question why him and not me, because like I said, I'm the one who's bruised and wounds and what have you. He had a simple blow to the head where he was rattled between the trailer and the back of the Suburban. That pretty much killed him here. He was perfect though. Otherwise unless you saw that, you wouldn't know that, anything was wrong or had happened to him. It was just his time. Mm-hmm. We don't know when it's going to be our time. Mm-hmm. It's not up to us. But that was his time. And I believe he chose it. He chose that time because he had 2 accidents prior to that time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Wow. And in going through this journey and reading and learning and what have you, I've learned that we choose, in some level, our exit point. Quinton, when he was about like maybe 6, 7, had a bronchitis. He was a croupy child.
Okay.
He had croup when he would get colds or whatever, it turned into croup. So he'd get that bark. He ended up getting a bronchial infection where it was closing his airway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we lived in Conifer, about 30 miles south of Children's Hospital. They ended up having to ambulatory him down to Children's Hospital because his airway was closing. They had to open him up and everything. And ultimately he was fine, but it was a close call for us.
Yeah.
The following year, he had an outing with his dad, Cub Scouts, zip line. And he took a fall going down that zip line just a little too fast, inches from a boulder.
Oh, gosh.
Hitting the back of his head. Okay. Both of those times could have taken him. This was the time and place that he chose to go on. We were told that, this was what he chose to go on this vacation, have the best time of his life. Yeah. While he was here and there. And we see that now. He was with us, but he was also in some levels transitioning already. He knew, and on some level, maybe we knew, I don't know. But like I said, in preparing for that vacation, I guess maybe I did, but, I think he had a premonition the night before. I don't know if Ernie mentioned that to you all. We woke up to him telling us about a dream he had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that Ernie had, and that Quinton told him, Dad, it wouldn't happen that way. I would just swim away, and we felt that's what he did. He slowly went on. He moved on, but he's still with us. He's still with us. Yeah. So he chose that. He chose that path, and however long we are here, we're going to try to make the best of our time here, but it could be tomorrow. We don't really think about, we just try and live in the moment, being the best that we could possibly be for ourselves and for each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned is that you could see that Ernie was doing fairly well, in your words, and that you felt like you would eventually be okay. What were some of those things that helped you get to that point
hearing
of
him
you
speak.
being okay?
Yeah. Hearing him speak, the positivity in him, I guess, because that was not my husband.
Yeah.
That was a different person. I could see the changes.
Yeah.
I could see the changes happening before my eyes, and I was happy because, like I said, that was not him.
Because even in his words, though, he was like, I felt like I was the same person.
And
even though he said he had multiple people come to him and be like, this is not who you were before. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm the same.
No. Ernie was very much dedicated to the business corporate world.
Yeah. He did mention that it wasn't all about work anymore, but just his personality and like how talkative he was. He felt like he was kind of the same before and after, but he had multiple people come to him and tell him, no, you were never like this before. You never talked like this.
Right. Like I said, he was reserved. He was a reserved person, he would talk, and he would engage, but on this level that he was engaging upon, sharing what he was sharing.
Yeah.
And he was just different. He was different. Yeah. And me listening to him, seeing the changes happen before my eyes was amazing. It was amazing because at that point in time, I had been married to him. We've been married 33 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So at that point in time, I think it was like 16, 17 years. I was, like I said, I was seeing things that I hadn't seen prior. And it took a transition of our son.
Yeah.
for that to come out, and it was Quinton.
Yeah.
He was working his magic in his dad, is what I say, as well as me, as well as his sister, and I just feel like, that the child, anybody he touched, there was just a glow about them, all the encouraging words and everything from everybody that has ever known him. It warms my heart. It really warms my heart because he was that kind of a child that just radiates joy, radiates joy. So yeah, it was definitely part of the healing process of hearing him share the messages.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't stop talking. And that was part of our grief healing. That's how he was grieving. And I was grieving in a different way. And I had realization, you know what, that's okay for us to grieve differently. It really is. Ultimately, we're together. We're in the same home. We're in the same home. We're doing what's best for our hearts. And it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out, I believe I was then, and I always have been, a very positive person, optimistic.
Yeah.
And I still was, while the forgiveness was hard for me, I got there, and I knew I could get there. I just needed the time to get there.
And you wanted to get
there.
And
I wanted to get there. Yeah. Ultimately, I wanted to get there. And I knew all of it was a part of the grief journey.
Yeah.
So all in time, not my time.
Yeah.
I believe it's always God's time.
Yeah.
I did. Because I always remained faithful, and just knew it'll happen. It'll happen. I'm not in control. I know that. I learned that from my husband because, he always thought he was in control. As a man, you want to be in control.
True.
Saw it firsthand. We're not in control. This is not for us. He has control. He has control up there. But he'll be with us every step of the way as long as we remain faithful. Yeah.
So how long do you think it got you to have kind of that moment where you were able to say, like, I am okay?
I think probably when we moved back here.
Okay. And when was that?
I moved back here summer of 2012.
Okay.
2012, back into the home that we purchased out here. It's back with my mom. And I think that was a time for me to be able to move forward. Ultimately, I wanted to be back in Arizona because while we had so many friends and people that loved us in Colorado, we had no family, none whatsoever. And I needed family. I needed family desperately. And my dad's family was all in California, and my mom's family was all out here. And I wanted to be with her. Her and I, our relationship, we're very bonded.
Yeah.
And even though she's not with me anymore here in the physical, we're still very bonded. And she's what helped me. She has what helped me get through this journey. So I think coming back to Arizona, Ernie later joined us in Thanksgiving. I believe it was Thanksgiving of that same year. Him and my nephew, who lived with us as well in Colorado, they made their way down. And that we were back. We were back. We were thinking we were going to stay here and be here and everything. And we did. We lived in our home for another year. It became a little, crowded, but we ended up buying another home the following year to accommodate us all, which was fine. 2013 is where we moved into our house that we're currently in now.
Wow.
And then we've kind of gone back and forth. 2015, we went back to Colorado. So while my mom still lived in our home that we moved, we sold the one that we initially bought for her. And then we bought another one to accommodate us all. It had a lower level casita for her. As she was getting older in age, we wanted to make sure she had her own space.
Yeah. And
her own apartment, so to speak. And then we had the upstairs and several other bedrooms whoever else was living with us. We always had somebody living with us. But ultimately 2015, we attempted to go back to Colorado. We were still in limbo. I had bought property back in Colorado. My daughter had gotten married, 2013. So she was 19 at that time. And I bought a home. She was going to have my first grandson, and I bought a home for her.
In Colorado?
In Colorado. Yeah. Yeah. They had an apartment, and so we would go back and forth.
Yeah.
Ernie was still in limbo of what he really wanted to do, and thought he was working in consulting and what have you. And so we were able to go back and forth. We lived there pretty much for a year in 2015. His work was pretty much Arizona and Colorado.
Okay.
So, and then we came back in 16. We went back in 17 because he was toying with residential real estate, where he currently is in commercial real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Played around with residential in 2017, sold a couple of houses. The year pretty much kept us there in 2017. 2018, we came back, and it's like, you know what? We need to figure out what we're doing here, because
like
we're going back and forth.
Back and forth.
Yeah, it's like I really just we can't do the cold anymore. You know, my body can't do the cold anymore. Part of my injuries left me with severe nerve damage and an arthritic body, and I can't do the cold anymore. We lived at 9,000 elevation. It was cold. And he came to realize, you know, yeah, you're right. You know, let's just stay settled. We'll do Arizona, and that's where we'll retire, you know. So we were happy at that point in time. So like that's 2018, and everything's good, you know. Our life is good. Career wise, he's good. You know, I didn't go back to work. I kind of have been, at that point in time, I was caretaker for my mom, because she was she was a breast cancer survivor. But in 2019, she got re-diagnosed with bone cancer. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of her caretaker. And you know, she was going through what she needed to go through. And she was there for me when I needed her. And now I could be there for her when she needed me. Because when she went through that breast cancer initially in 2006, I wasn't here. I was living in Colorado. So now it was my time to be here for her. And I was, until her very last day in June of 2023. I cared for her.
With everything that had happened with your dad and then with Quinton, do you think that made it easier
with my mom?
With your mom? Yeah.
You know, I don't know that it would made it easier, but it definitely prepared my heart.
Yeah.
Prepared my heart, you know, knowing that she's eventually going to go and be with my dad, the love of her life. You know, they had been together since they were 14.
Wow.
Yeah. So she had now been away from him for 20 years in the physical. You know, she's spiritual like me. So she would tell me, oh, your dad was at my bed last night because he was tapping on my leg.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so we had those kinds of conversations in our house. You know, people who didn't know us or who weren't into that would think, oh, these people are weird. So no, we have those conversations, you know, well, there's the light, it's flickering, you know, he's sending me a sign, you know, stuff like that. So I knew, when it was her time, I'm going to be happy. Yeah. You know, yes, she's my peace. She's my comfort. And she's not here in the physical. You know, I'm not going to get that morning hug from her, you know, because we greet each other every morning. But she's with my dad and she's with my son.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that they're together. So on my heart, it made it easier to process that transition.
Yeah.
And the fact that she didn't suffer. She took her last breath in my arms.
Wow.
You know, so I did get that hug. You know, ultimately I was the last one to get that hug. I knew that she wasn't in any more pain, you know, and that's all we could ever want, for someone to be rid of their pain, suffering, you know, and she endured a lot. So now it's her time to fly, the way I see it. You know, and we'll eventually be together, because that's how I view life. You know, this is just one realm. You know, we get to all be together, you know, at some point in time. Yeah. So it did helped me with her transition, and going through my dad's and then my son's and then knowing with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable sharing, in what ways do you still feel or see Quinton in your life?
Oh my goodness. Definitely the hummingbirds.
Okay.
So while we feed them, we welcome them. Just nature in general.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a little story. When we moved into our current home in 2013, we had no pets. None. No, actually we did. We had our 2 dogs. We had 2 puggles. But currently we have 4, which are my daughters. I told my son, it must have been a year or so after moving in, if you want to send me a sign, you know how to send me a sign. I'm a cat lover. We didn't have cats. Here in Arizona, once we moved back, we had them in Colorado. You want to send me a sign? You know how to send me a sign. Send me a sign. And little by little, I had strays showing up.
Oh, wow.
Really?
There was at one point in time, I had 6 or 7 strays because I'd feed them. I'd go outside, sit on my back patio. I love to be outdoors. And all of a sudden I had different cats showing up to my back window. I'd be cleaning my dishes or doing stuff in my kitchen and there'd be a cat at my window just looking at me, different ones. They're all coming. And you knew, I told you, you knew how to get to me. And my mom was just like in awe. She's not a cat lover. Chris, you're feeding these cats. I say, yes, I'm feeding them, but I know who's sending them.
Yeah.
So he did. He knew how to get to me and the cats were there. And then eventually they went on their way and whatever. My daughter ended up moving with us. Coming down in 2017, she brought her dog, 2 dogs, and they were barkers and yappers. The 2 that I had were not.
Yeah.
So they didn't bother the cats. They was nothing to them to see cats. Her 2, they didn't want to see that. So the cats eventually stopped coming. But I thought that was a pretty cool sign, and that he was sending them, and I recognized. But definitely the cats, the birds. Hummingbirds were crazy. They were in my face at one point in time, trying to get my attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll see hearts, a lot of things. Ernie and I'll be going for walks. I'll look at that's a rock. It's a heart-shaped rock though. So those things catch my eye.
Yeah.
A lot of energy. Our house, this house specifically, we get a lot of the flickering lights. And it's always like when we're in conversation about something, and whether it's him or my mom or my dad or something, the lights start flickering. It's like, okay, we understand, we see, we know you're there. So definitely the energy. Ernie and I will go for walks through the neighborhood or whatever, and all of a sudden a street light will go on or it'll go off. So we just say, hey, Q, then we recognize that. So that there's always things, there's songs that come on the radio, I'm in my feelings or something, and then a song will come on that I remember, because we could get very animated in the vehicle, so remembering those times, that all make me remember, those were our times together, and so many, we had so many. Yeah. So lots of signs, dream visits. I've had dream visits of him.
Wow.
I've felt him during the time of my healing part, the 2-year, like I said, the 2-year time frame that it really took me time to process, heal, and release the heaviness in my heart. He did come to me in a dream visit. I have 2 piercings on each ear, and I happen to wear that for some reason, the piercing in my second hole to sleep, knowing that I don't sleep with my earrings. I take them off because I don't like that they dig into the side of my skin here. And I had a dream visit of him, and we're in the dream, and I see him and I feel him, and we just happen to have an accident in that dream where we went off an embankment together in a vehicle past but yet we're in a body of water together and we're both happy to be together.
Wow.
And I'm elated because the fact that we're together, I could see him, I could feel him, our energy. I see he's happy, and I'm just so excited. And then he tells me, Mom, you can't stay. You have to go back. And I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave that instance. And I realized I was in pain at that point, because I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want to let go of him. But I knew I had to go back. I knew I had to go back. And I did. I woke up from that dream and my earring was on my pillow off of my ear. And they're the ones with the lockbacks.
Yeah.
So it's like, I related it to, again, part of my healing process. I was hurting myself. I know I take my earrings off every night. Why didn't I take my earrings off before I laid down on my pillow, But it led me into that dream to have it with him, to have that time with him. And he took care of the pain level. He took the earring off of my ear. And it was a monumental moment for me to know, okay, I don't have to endure this pain.
Yeah.
I don't have, because most of it, I'm doing it to myself. Nobody's doing it to me. I just have to process. I just have to be able to process it. And he's going to help me. And he's going to help me. And he did. He did. So that was one of the dream visits that we all long to have, that time. That time, it's precious. And we don't want it to end. We don't want it to end. We don't want to open our eyes and wake up from that dream. But ultimately, we do. Because it's not our time yet. We still have things to do. We still have work to do. But I long for those kind of dreams. I look forward to going to bed every night. I'm very much, when it's bedtime, you don't have to tell me twice, I want to go to bed. I hope to have those kinds of dreams. I was so grateful that I'm not burdened by the accident, the trauma that it did to my body. I'm not. There's so much healing that has gone on that I look forward to the happy dreams. Yeah. I don't have nightmares. I thought I would have nightmares from the trauma. No, and I'm blessed. I'm blessed for that. When I do dream, it's usually happy. He'll come. There'll be signs, or there'll be dreams of something that maybe I need to, that may be coming, something that may be coming, to like some awareness, just to be insight of something that may be coming. Yeah. And I'm wise enough to know now, okay, I'm just going to be open.
Yeah.
Because again, we're not in control, just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that waking up in that hospital room, it would have been pretty traumatic and a lot of stuff. If you could go back to yourself and just talk to yourself when you first woke up in that hospital and tell yourself something to maybe help you through the next, 16 years.
Yeah.
What would you say to yourself?
You got this. Because I was very much the kind of person, I took a backseat to everything, to my husband, to life in general. Like I said, I was a very reserved kind of person. My husband was the one that wanted to move to Colorado. I didn't want to leave. My family was in Arizona, but being raised the way I was raised, knowing, okay, you do, what's your husband, this is his career. You follow him and see where it takes you all.
Yeah.
And my parents would have had it no other way, so they didn't try to tell me, no, don't do that. You can't take the children or whatever. No, you follow your husband's goals.
Yeah.
So we did. But I wanted to be with family, and I didn't know how I would do it, and it was hard. It was very hard for me because that was 1998. I got pregnant with Quinton in 99. And that's, like I said, his whole process of getting pregnant with him and coming into the world was a blessing to me because I needed him at that point in time.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. I was young. Like I took a backseat to everything. I was just going with the flow of life. You know, I never kind of really stood my ground. I didn't know my worth. Didn't know my worth at that point in time. And that's one of the things that came out of this is I am very independent now. Very independent. I know my worth as a independent, female.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have a lot to offer.
Yeah.
The world, the people that I choose to have in my energetic filled circle, because I'm very reserved when it comes to who I surround myself with, the energy that I allow to be given and the energy that I receive from others. So ultimately, I think if I had waking up in that hospital, I didn't know what was going on and why I was in so much pain, to be able to tell myself, you got this, you're going to be okay. You're going to come out even stronger,
mm-hmm.
and you're going to be so much wiser, so much wiser. And I am. And he gave me that gift to really know my worth as an individual, to know that I'm strong, It took, losing him, in finding that out. But not a day goes by now that, that I question myself or think that I don't have anything to offer. No, I know now, that, there's just so much more. And we're a gift to this world, all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have something to offer somebody. We all have a purpose. So that ultimately that's it, that I got this and that I'm worthy of surviving that accident.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just some key takeaways I would take from all of this. You talked about prayer a lot.
Absolutely.
And you talked about putting in that work to actually forgive somebody.
Was
crucial.
That was the hardest thing for me. Hardest thing for me is to put in that work, but knowing that, because I wanted to get there.
Yes.
I was not content being where I was. So I had to put in the work. I had to do it, not anybody else.
Yeah.
Couldn't allow anyone else to do it for me or to help me along with that. No, me. I had to process it. And I did in my time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Nobody was forcing me, questioning me. No, I didn't. And like I said, now I feel nothing weighing me down anymore. I have no guilt. I know I wish her everything in the world.
Yeah.
I see the happiness on her children's faces and I'm grateful. I'm grateful because her life could have gone a different way too.
Yeah.
So it all worked out for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also submitting to the higher power, to God, right? He's ultimately in control. We can control some little stuff, but knowing that what he wants is important to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Never question it.
Yeah.
Never question it. Keeping the faith always, first and foremost, in any situation. We're all going to have dark times, even going forward,
Mm-hmm.
But knowing he's got our back, if anybody in this world has our back, it's always going to be him.
Yeah.
Always, and he's never going to allow us to go through anything without walking beside us through however harsh it may be, So that comfort, that's very comforting to me in knowing that.
And then lastly, I would say is you talked about looking for signs and being thankful when those signs come.
Oh yeah. Always. I was looking for them because, Ernie was he got him initially. And I was a little angered.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's getting signs already and I'm not, but here I am in pain and my head's elsewhere.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for them. I wasn't ready to receive them, acknowledge them. But once I allowed myself to get there, they came in abundance. So yeah. Then we started asking for them, can't be greedy now, so I was just taking, what I could get.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those dream visits were the ultimate gifts. And now, I feel like everything we do, we're very much moviegoers. So we love to go to movies, and it's like, we always see the spiritual message in the movies that we choose to watch. One of the we went to a movie one time, and I'm sure it was a Marvel. My husband's a big Marvel. And there was a couple, a father and a son behind us. We never looked back, but in one of the scenes, we could hear the child laughing, and I swear it was my son.
Wow.
I swear it was my son, and I never looked back to even question. I just sat with it, and we both looked at each other.
Wow.
And thought, wow. Because if you ever look into piggybacking, spirits can piggyback into other people.
Wow.
And that was one of the incidences where I believe he allowed himself, that, and allowed us to hear it. We both recognized it, and then we just continued on watching the movie.
Yeah.
Just great joy.
Yeah.
Great joy. Just gratitude. Gratitude. I think that's what, if one of the things that I could really say is, I really live a life of gratitude and appreciation for what this whole journey has brought to me. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it took Quinton passing, but the gifts that he's brought to our lives, the awareness, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. And you referenced him as Q one time. So
Q,
thank you for sharing Q with us.
Yeah, Q. And then I did already tell you the story of his middle name?
He
Stone?
did. Yeah.
So yeah, he's special. That child. Yeah. Quinton Stone. Yeah. Q man. We call him Q man.
Awesome.
I love it.
Thank you for being on the podcast and sharing
thanks
your
so
story
much,
with us.
Kristine.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here with both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Lost Child podcast. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. And remember, shine bright, and we'll see you in the next episode.